Every single corporate Democrat who has promoted trade deals, which are really simple, they're not free trade deals, they are corporate bureaucracy deals, particularly TPP.
I feel like this whole debate is going to be a waste of time. I feel like the whole debate is he's going to say, like, well, corporations gain more from trades than any American does, so therefore they're all bad. And I'm like, well, it doesn't, just because a corporation gains more doesn't mean it's necessarily bad for America. Like, can't we like have better tax policy? They're like, well, we don't have that tax policy, so fuck all the trade deals. Like, okay, like, god damn it.
P was condemned as one of multiple examples, but I'll just focus on this one for the moment. International medical activists, because it would have been a direct threat to generic drugs and readily accessible drugs for underdeveloped countries. That was one area. It would have cost a lot of lives. The investor dispute mechanism is an anti-democratic mechanism that would basically override nation states' ability to legislate environmental labor protections in favor of whatever a corporation.
Okay, I'm either going to get completely crushed this debate, or he is going to get completely crushed. Holy shit.
Corporation demanded, whether it was a bank, pharmaceutical company, tobacco company, tech industry. And every single time a Democrat says that they're proposing a new kind of trade agreement or backing a new kind of trade agreement, Bill Clinton said NAFTA would have unparalleled environmental and labor standards. It did not. It led to a proliferation of sweatshops, environmental pollution. It was actually great for cartel trafficking. It was a huge breakthrough in how drugs are moved into this country. And it lost a fair amount of blue-collar jobs. TPP.
Love you and
Also,
Michael both
and Barack
excited
Obama
for the
used the
talk.
exact same
Rainbows
rhetoric.
descent by.
Also, and Barack Obama used the exact same rhetoric. So Joe Biden here is pretending, even though he fought his heart out while he was vice president for TPP, even though it was anti-public health, anti-worker, anti-environment, he's pretending now that he would support something different by resorting to the same rhetoric that Democrats that try to sell these awful deals have always resorted to. Let's take a look from last night.
Vice President Biden, just to be clear, would you or would you not rejoin the TPP, yes or no?
I would not rejoin the TPP as it was initially put forward. I would insist that we renegotiate pieces of that with the Pacific nations that we had in South America and North America so that we could bring them together to hold China accountable for the rules of us setting the rules of the road as to how trade should be conducted. Otherwise, they're going to do exactly what they're doing, fill the vacuum and run the table.
So, again, this means extremely little. As far as it being a counterweight to China, that's the prime way TPP is sold from a geostrategic standpoint. And there's two ways of answering this. One, of course, from a worker, normal person perspective, you are not in competition with China. In fact, there are some very significant overlapping interests between working people in both countries and working people internationally, obviously.
Wait, hold on. What?
Person perspective, you are not in competition with China. In fact, there are some very significant it being a counterweight to China. That's the prime way TPP is sold from a geostrategic standpoint. And there's two ways of answering this. One, of course, from a worker, normal person perspective, you are not in competition with China. In fact, there are some very significant overlapping interests between working people in both countries and working people internationally, obviously. Everybody, regardless of conditions, wants to get paid better, have more power over their own work lives. The other dynamic here...
This sounds really reductionist. Like, do working people in China really push for reforms to help working people in the United States?
Is that, China and the United States obviously have had for quite some time now a reciprocal relationship where you basically exchange cheap sweatshop labor for incredibly cheap products. That dynamic is changing. I mean, China is now certainly a power in its own right, and only going to get more so. That's just reality. I'm a big critic of many aspects of the Chinese model and foreign policy, obviously. And they've also lifted a lot of people out of poverty, and they are going to reassert their role in the world. It's a historic anomaly and oddity that China has not played a more significant role in the past couple of years. That bodes very badly in some areas. It bodes well in others, potentially. So that kind of rhetoric, though, of containing China and getting serious about IP and all of these types of things. First of all, the United States has a reciprocal relationship, obviously, between Silicon Valley and the defense establishment and so on. So that's one thing. So if you want to really deal with China in these more sort of geostrategic questions, there needs to be things like a Geneva Convention on how we deal with technology, how we deal with hacking and drones and all of these other types of issues. But, you know, the geostrategic concerns of a very narrow set of interest is antithetical in the TPP to the lived concerns of people who work across Asia, people who need medicine, and everybody who breathes on the planet. This is Joe Biden in 2013, loving TPP.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership is perhaps the most ambitious.
He said the TTP in the last clip, and he can't say it in this clip
I think
either.
the TTP was the European version.
T-tip or something like that?
Yeah, I think
don't
so.
know.
I could be wrong,
Right.
but I think he's making some type of mistake like that.
The Trans-Pacific Partnership is perhaps the most ambitious trade negotiation underway in the world. It will break new ground on important issues, from the challenges of state-owned enterprises to ensuring the free flow of data across borders, to enhancing regional supply chains, to ensuring transparency and cutting red tape. We're also working to strengthen protections for labor and the environment. We Americans, we welcome competition. It's stamped into our DNA. It is not a problem. What we're talking about is shaping a new standard that can become the metric by which all future trade agreements are measured. You know that genuine competition pushes our companies and our people.
Stunning that he would say the free flow of information when one of the prime aspects of this is an incredibly restrictive intellectual property regime, which would, you know, if you want, yes, it would. That's what Hollywood wants in terms of bootlegging movies.
That's free trade.
That's right. That's free trade, is making sure that there aren't bootlegs in a market in Shanghai. Sure, whatever. And then, far more seriously, you're talking about IP laws that will protect pharmaceutical companies at the expense of global public health. You go back to the late 1990s, and the Clinton administration had to reverse themselves on this because Al Gore was getting protested at every single event by activists when he was running for president. The South African government, starting to recognize in the late 90s the scale and scope of the emerging AIDS crisis, wanted to deal with generic drugs as part of their solution. The Clinton administration, at the behest of the pharmaceutical industry, threatened extreme sanctions on South Africa. And that's another great example. I mean, I don't have time, obviously, to get into the controversies around Thabo and Mbeki and South Africa and AIDS, but just even consider that element of the story that has been so de-emphasized while there's been these kind of single focus on a particular leader's views of the science, which are wrong views, but that's the bigger context. So you're talking about that type of enforcement for a whole range of drugs across the globe under TPP. It's a fundamentally anti-worker bill, a fundamentally anti-public health bill, and he obviously is not talking about doing anything different. I mean, this is a very Trump move almost. This is just call it something different.
It's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. You're gonna love it. So, Joe Biden continues his I guess not even devolution, just his stasis.
Mendacity.
His mendacity. The 1985 Democratic Leadership Council energy. And it's not good for you folks. Not good. And also, and I say this as somebody who, again, it's like, I disagreed with Sam. I don't think him saying, don't be too hard on me, kid. I think, frankly, a lot of people find that kind of charming. I don't like... You can't go after him on every single thing when you talk to a broader base of people. But I am becoming increasingly concerned watching him debate that, like, this guy is just absolutely not up for this. Like, on the substance and also on, like, he's not up for this. Like, he's looking very bad up there. And I'm starting to get quite concerned about the idea of the guy being on a stage with Donald Trump.
This feels deceptively easy. I feel like I must be missing something. I don't know. We'll see. Good luck. Oh, I was gonna listen to this last night, but I didn't have time. Fuck.
Good afternoon, everyone.
It's like an hour and 35-minute thing to get more in depth about the pharmaceutical stuff. Go to 5010. Wait, what? Are you familiar with this?
Heard arguments that TPP. Okay, well, thank you very much for the invitation to participate. So you've heard arguments that TPP may be too strong, too weak. So by default, I'll take the position that it's just right.
New watcher, loving the content.
Cato, as a libertarian organization, you would expect Cato's default position to be anti-patent or pro-patent. I would imagine it would be anti, but I don't know where they fall on that. I only know their immigration stuff. Fuck, I'm doing this podcast at 5:30 today? What? Wow, 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 wow. Famously average podcast.
Celebrating 6 years sober this week. Thanks for your content, Destiny.
What's your opinion on the ISDS issue? What is an ISDS? Is that like a computer program? Wait, what did you say? Oh, thanks. Random 1, 6 years sober. Investor state dispute settlements. What's that? Is this an important part of the TPP? I'm just kidding. Listen. I don't know what's wrong with the ISDS. I don't know. Third-party arbitration is totally standard in most of these types of trade arrangements. We already are party to like 50 trade agreements that have these types of third-party arbitration courts. It seems like it works in a fairly fair way. You nominate a guy, the other guy nominates a guy, and then both of you come together and nominate a third party, and at least two of these people have to agree with you in order to resolve some sort of dispute. I don't know what's wrong with that. Wait, why is that a bad thing? I don't know. I looked into the ISDS stuff, and it seems fine. Like, yeah, if anything, people seem to say that the ISDS in the TPP would actually be an improvement over our current thing. Which even this article, which seems to be against the ISDS system in regards to public health, seems to say that.
As an economist, one of our jobs is to try to predict. And I think it's very difficult to predict what are the impacts of TPP. You know, you hear that...
There are many examples of shitty corporations trying to sue third world countries of money because they make positive legislation. Wait, can you give me some examples of these, if there are so many examples? I guess the big examples that I was pointed to seem to go against it when, is it Philip Morrison? Is that the tobacco company? Tried to sue Australia and one other country because they said that the labeling they were forcing them to use on their tobacco packages, that was unethical. They tried to sue them, and then they lost that case. Like, oh, Uruguay. Philip Morris for Uruguay. Yeah, they lost that too. Should I be IP ban people for like baiting people into thinking people got banned? Invader V is not banned. I don't know why you keep linking channels that aren't hers. But okay, they lost the case. But the fact that corporations have that possibility is just ass. But it's not. I don't understand. This is actually one of the things that I was told by a lawyer when I wanted to take OWN to court because I wanted to see if I could sue them for money they owed me. And the guy said that going to foreign courts is fucking AIDS when you're like doing business stuff because like foreign courts tend to give favorable rulings to nationals over like foreign investors or whatever. I mean, like if you're doing investment in other countries, you want to be protected from things like expropriation. Fuck, I wish that I knew. Man, I met a guy while I was carpet cleaning who told me about this. I don't know if this is true or not. Maybe someone in chat can tell me if this is true or not. This guy told me that he worked with a company and they cut things with water. That like some high pressure water system that they did like a lot of like construction related work in other countries. I don't know what this is or anything about this technology or whatever. But he told me that when they build jobs, he told me that what they did was they billed the job for the entire cost of their equipment because sometimes when they would go and work in other countries, the countries would just keep their shit and they wouldn't let them take it with them. I don't know if that's true or not, but like that kind of shit sounds like super fucked. Every company does it in Africa. Yeah, he said that those are like in those kinds of countries. He said that this wouldn't happen in like fucking Poland or I don't know, I said Poland or like Germany or France or whatever. But that when you're working in like poorer countries, that oftentimes I believe this would be considered expropriation. That in places like in Africa or South America, they would just take your shit. They'd be like, you can't take this back with you. Like we're just holding on to it. See you later. So he said that when they build their jobs, they would have to bill with the understanding that they could that their shit could be just taken from them. I don't think it's logical to want to sue back your money if you invest in shares that drop. If some corporations invest money in a country that ends up not being profitable, then they shouldn't have invested in the first place. You don't get to sue a company. You don't get to sue a country because you lost money there. What do you mean? That's not how that works.
Potentially, there'll be new innovations in medicine, or that TPP will endanger public health, but there just are no impact studies on the 12 countries. So, for example, in certain cities, if an energy company wants to drill for oil or build a dam, they would have to do an environmental assessment, right? But we don't, unfortunately, have these for trade agreements. So we have to do a lot of speculation. And so with that in mind, that's how I'll design my remarks. Okay, so again, to reiterate some background. True, in the case of this industry, pharmaceuticals and biopharmaceuticals, these are industries that are heavily reliant on patent protection. That's pretty well known. And for the following reasons, there's high cost of R&D, high cost of testing, years of R&D. I spoke to some person in the one of the bio researchers last week, and he mentioned that he sits around doing 15 years of R&D, right? So, and also high failure rate, very low drug approval rate. And on top of all this, there's high consumer demand, obviously, for treating diseases, illnesses. And so this industry is a frequent...
I don't care about this. It's too late for this type of research, boys, okay? Can we look at the Comprehensive Progressive Agreement for Transfer? Oh, yeah. After the U.S. dropped, I think Japan bullied everybody into actually signing the revived agreement.